Reflections of an author weighty reasons for writing Magister Artis ingeniique largiter venter choice of subject considered advice of index. The bookseller of the nature of prefaces how to commence a new work. Author Solus. I must write my last sovereign has long since been transferred to the safe keeping of mine hostess, to whom I have the honor to be obliged. I just caught a glance of her inflexible countenance this morning in passing the parlor door, and methought I could perceive the demon aspect of suspicion again spreading his corrosive murky hue over her furrowed front. The enlivening appearance of my golden ambassador had for a few days procured me a faint smile of complacency. But the spell is past, and I shall again be doomed to the humiliation of hearing Mrs. Martha Bridget's morning lectures on the necessity of punctuality. Well, she must be quieted, i.e., promise crammed. Satisfied, under existing circumstances, is impossible. I know it will require no little skill to obtain fresh supplies from her stores, without the master key which unlocks the flinty heart. But nil disperandum, he who can brave a formidable army of critics, in pursuit of the bubble fame, may at least hope to find wit enough to quiet the interested apprehensions of an old woman. And yet how mortifying is the very suspicion of inattention and disrespect. I have rung 6 times for my breakfast, and as many more for my boots before either have made their appearance. The first has indeed just arrived, with a lame apology from mine hostess, that the gentleman on the first floor is a very impetuous fellow, requires prompt attention, gives a great deal of trouble, but then he pays a great deal of money, and above all, is very punctual. Here is my quietus at once. The last sentence admits of no reply from a penniless author. My breakfast table is but the spectre of former times, no eggs on each side of my cup, or a plate of fresh Lynn shrimps with an inviting salt odor that would create an appetite in the stomach of an invalid. A choice bit of dried salmon, or a fresh cut off the roll of some violet-scented Epping butter. All have disappeared. Nay, even the usual allowance of cream has degenerated into skimmed milk, and that is supplied in such cautious quantities that I can scarce eke it out to color my 3 cups of inspiring bohea. A knock at the door. That single rap at the street door is very like the loud, determined knock of a dun. The servant is ascending the stairs. It must be, so she advances upon the second flight. Good heavens, how stupid! I particularly told her I should not be in town to any of these people for a month. The inattention of servants is unbearable. They can tell fibs enough to suit their own purposes, but a little white one to serve a gentleman lodger, to put off an impertinent tradesman, or save him from the toils of a sheriff's officer, is sure to be marred in the relation or altogether forgotten. I'll lock my chamber door, however, by way of precaution. Servant knocking. What do you want, Mr.? Index, sir, the little gentleman in black. Show him up, Betty, directly. The key is instantly turned, the door set wide open, and I am again seated in comfort at my table. The solicitude, fear, and anxiety, attendant upon the apprehensions of surprise, a bailiff, and a prison, all vanish in a moment. My dear Index, you are welcome, the last person I expected, although the first I could have wished to have seen. To what fortunate circumstance am I to attribute the honor of this friendly visit? Business, sir. I am a man of business. Your last publication has sold pretty well, considering how dreadfully it was cut up in the reviews. I have some intention of reprinting a short edition, if you are not too exorbitant in your demands. Not that I think the whole number will be sold, but there is a chance of clearing the expenses. A portrait by Wageman, the announcement of a second edition, with additions, may help it off. But then these additional costs will prevent my rewarding your merits to the extent I am sensible you deserve. Name your own terms, Index, for after all you know it must come to that, and I am satisfied you will be as liberal as you can afford. Put in this way, the most penurious of the speculating tribe in paper and print would have strained a point, to overcome their natural infirmity. With Index it was otherwise. Nature had formed him with a truly liberal heart. The practice of the trade, and the necessary caution attendant upon bookselling speculations, only operated as a check to the noble-minded generosity of the ~10 man, without implanting in his bosom the avarice and extortion generally pursued by his brethren. The immediate subject of his visit, arranged to our mutual satisfaction, I ventured to inquire what style of work was most likely to interest the taste of the town. The town itself satire, sir, fashionable satire. If you mean to grow rich by writing in the present day, you must first learn to be satirical. Use the lash, sir, as all the great men have done before you, and then, like Canning in the Cabinet, or Gifford and Jeffrey as reviewers, or Byron and Southey as poets, you will be followed more from the fear of your pen than from the splendor of your talents, the consistency of your conduct, or the morality of your principles. Sir, if you can but use the tomahawk skillfully, your fortune is certain. Sic iter ad astra. Read Blackwood's Noctia Ambrosians. Take the town by surprise, folly by the ears. The glory, jest, and riddle of the world is man. Use your knowledge of this ancient volume rightly, and you may soon mount the car of fortune and drive at random wherever your fancy dictates. Bear in mind the Greek proverb, megabiblion megakakin. In your remarks, select such persons who, from their elevated situations in society, ought to be above reproof, and whose vices are, therefore, more worthy of public condemnation. Ridiculum acri fortius ac melius magnus plerumque secat res. By this means you will benefit the state and improve the morals of society. The most wholesome truths may be told with pleasantry. Satire, to be severe, needs not to be scurrilous. The approval of the judicious will always follow the ridicule which is directed against error, ignorance, and folly. How long little Index might have continued in this strain I know not, if I had not ventured to suggest tilde that the course he pointed out was one of great difficulty and considerable personal hazard, that to arrive at fortune by such means, an author must risk the sacrifice of many old connections and incur no inconsiderable dangers. That great caution would be necessary to escape the fangs of the forensic tribe, and that involuntarily thrusting his nose into such a nest of hornets, it would be hardly possible to escape being severely stung in retaliation. Pulchrum est accusari a accusandis, said my friend, the bookseller, who has suffered more by the fashionable world than yourself. Have you not dissipated a splendid patrimony in a series of the most liberal entertainments? Has not your generous board been graced with the presence of royalty, and the banquet enriched by the attendant stars of nobility, from the Duke to the right honorable knight commander? And have you not since felt the most cruel neglect from these your early associates, and much obliged friends, with no crime but poverty, with no reproach but the want of prudence? Have you not experienced ingratitude and persecution in every shape that human baseness could find ingenuity to inflict? And can you hesitate to avail yourself of the noble revenge in your power, when it combines the advantages of being morally profitable both to yourself and society? Velet materna tempora mieto, virg. When vice the shelter of a mask disdained, when folly triumphed and a Nero reigned, Petronius rose satiric, yet polite, and showed the glaring monster full in sight, to public mirth exposed the imperial beast, and made his wanton court the common jest. With this quotation, delivered with good emphasis, little Index bade me good morning, and left me impressed with no mean opinion of his friendship, and with an increased admiration of his knowledge of the world. But how, thought I, am I to profit by his advice? In what shape shall I commence my eccentric course? A good general at the head of a large army, on the eve of a general battle, with the enemy full in view, feels less embarrassment than a young author finds in marshalling his crude ideas, and placing the raw recruits of the brain in anything like respectable order. For the title, that is quite a matter of business, and depends more upon the bookseller's opinion of what may be thought attractive than any affinity it may possess to the work itself. Dedications are, thanks to the economy of fashion, out of date. Great men have long since been laughed into good sense in that particular. A preface, if there be one, should partake something of the spirit of the work. For if it be not brief, lively, and humorous, it is 10 to 1 but your reader falls asleep before he enters upon chapter the first, and when he wakes, fears to renew his application, lest he should be again caught napping. Long introductions are like lengthy prayers before meals to hungry men. They are mumbled over with unintelligible rapidity, or altogether omitted, for the more solid gratifications of the stomach, or the enjoyments of the mind. In what fantastic shape and countenance then shall an author appear to obtain general approbation. Or in what costume is he most likely to ensure success? If he assumes a fierce and haughty front, his readers are perhaps offended with his temerity, and the critics enraged at his assurance. If he affects a modest, sneaking posture, and humbly implores their high mightinesses to grant him one poor sprig of laurel, he is treated slightingly, and despised, as a pitiful fellow who wants that essential ingredient in the composition of a man of talent and good breeding, yclept by the modern's confidence. If he speaks of the excellence of his subject, he creates doubts both with his readers and reviewers, who will use their endeavors to convince him he has not a correct knowledge of his own abilities. But if, like a well-bred man at court, he enters the drawing-room of literature in good taste, neither too mean nor too gaudy, too bold or too formal, makes his bow with the air and finish of a scholar and a gentleman, and passes on to his place, unheedful of remark, because unconscious of offense, he is sure to command respect if he does not excite admiration. Accept then, reader, this colloquial chapter, as the author's apology for a preface, an imaginary short conference or letter of introduction, which brings you acquainted with the eccentric writer of this volume. And as in all well-regulated society, a person is expected to give some account of himself before he is placed upon terms of intimacy with the family, you shall in the next page receive a brief sketch of the characteristics of the author. A few thoughts on myself.